Hi everyone, Marv Reynolds, co-founder, Reset Your Barcode Training Academy, back again to give you part two of the financial reset experience. Now, in part one, as you'll remember, that's where we took the photograph, the financial photo, the snapshot of your current situation, assets, liabilities, life insurance, and so forth. And all of that information shows up on this page, automatically populated. And then you're going to find, as we go through this, that every place where we have a green box, that's where we're going to be able to change or manipulate numbers to see what it's going to look like, to change it to look like what we want. So with that in mind, just a quick reference, you'll remember the People at Work, Money at Work platform. We go to work to earn a paycheck, and we use the paycheck to cover expenses, and then we go back to work. We call that the earn and consume treadmill. And too often we borrow money, and that adds a ball and chain to our process, and that means we spend a lot of time on this earn and consume treadmill, not making any headway. The only way to get out of that is to make sure we control spending so that we have some money surplus that can be saved. Now, remember we talked earlier about having money on demand. Well, the way you do that, or in other words, making sure that you have money in the future, comes two ways. Once you can save, you take some of the money and you buy freedom, or in other words, you buy dollars with pennies that show up on demand, such as with life insurance. On the other side, what you're doing is growing money over the long term so that you will have money available when you're ready to stop working. So with that in mind, if we look at these boxes, you'll remember that in our financial photo page, we indicated we had 25 years to work. So that's showing up here. Now again, in the future, we may change that. Then if we look over here on the left side of the dollar sign, this is where the life insurance and the current assets come into play. For example, where it says under Fred that he has $753,300, where that number is coming from, number one, it took all of his life insurance and it added his current assets, and then it subtracted his current liabilities. And so that shows us that in the event that Fred should get kicked off the planet, after debts are paid, Susan would have $753,300 to work with, and that shows that after the debts are paid, if this money were put to work at 3% interest, as we indicated over here, that would generate an income to Susan from Fred of $1,883 a month. Same thing is true on this side. If you take all of the life insurance plus the current assets minus the liabilities, in the event of Susan's death, Fred would have $353,300 available, which would generate $883 a month. Now this process uses what we call capital preservation. In other words, we're only living off the interest being earned by this money. We do that intentionally because over time, inflation takes its toll, and we eventually have to switch over and go into a capital utilization modality, which then means we're going to slowly use up the money. We just need to make sure that it lasts as long as you do. Now, staying on this side, the money we buy or the freedom we buy, the protection side of things, what we're really going to look at now is in the event that Fred should die and Susan would have her debts paid and be able to have $1,883 a month, Susan can look at that number and say, that works for me, or it doesn't. If she were to look at that and say, that's no good, I'm going to need at least $3,000 a month, or whatever the number would be, you'd come right back up here to this green box, and you just simply type the desired income that Susan would want to have if Fred were no longer here. So I type in the 3,000, and when I click, notice what happens. It changes the amount of insurance that would have to be added in order for that to take place. That being the case, then in the event that Fred passed away, if Susan wanted $3,000 a month, she'd have to add another, or Fred would have to add another $446,700 to his insurance portfolio to make that happen. Now let's look over here. If Susan were to die Fred looks at this and says, I'd only end up with $883 a month. I would actually need $2,000 a month in order to be able to carry on, take care of the kids, educate them, feed them, clothe them, whatever. So again, we come back up to this green box and we put the desired amount. So Fred says, I'd have to have at least $2,000 if something happened to Susan. We put that in, we click on it, and it shows us that in order to make that happen, Susan would have to buy another $446,700 in order to provide this income instead of this one to Fred. So what we've calculated here, and you can see these are the numbers you play with. What do you want to have happen? And that tells you, based upon what you already have, what else will have to be done to make that work. So I really like that because that's based on your numbers, not someone else's. So that's the money you buy, or the money on demand from the Freedom You Buy side. Now if we go to the other side of things, on the right hand side of the dollar symbol, now we're talking about the freedom you grow. In other words, making sure that you have the money you need 25 years from now so that you can retire and still have income. Well, again, based on 25 years to put together your portfolio, based on a 3% annualized rate of return. And again, that will adjust annually so that it stays current with what's really going on. Here's what's happening. We're showing down here that you're currently setting aside $783 per month. Okay, that information came from the financial photo page. That information, if I take that number and grow that every year for the 25 years, add it to this number, the current assets of $318,500, and see what it looks like in 25 years, you'll see that those two combined turn into $1,023,000. Well, that $1,023,000 at 3% interest will generate $2,558 a month. So it's looking pretty good. But let's say Fred and Susan look at that and say, that's not quite what we had in mind. We would rather have a retirement income of $3,500 a month. That being the case, all we have to do, now this is very important because many times when people do their plans, they say, what do I want? So what do I have to do? And if what is required is bigger than they have the capacity to perform, it becomes a very discouraging event. So rather than worry about what we can't do, I like to focus on what I can do. So that's where this green box comes into play. We're currently setting aside $783 a month. If $2,558 monthly at age 65 is not going to be satisfactory, what I like to look at is, what can I do different than I'm doing now? If I'm currently setting aside $783, could I bump that to, say, $2,000 a month? If I could, then I would put that, and that would show that I'm now saving $2,783. If I couldn't do that, I would say, well, could I bump that number to be another $1,500 a month, or any number? So let's say I can add $500 a month to what I'm currently doing. This is what Fred's going to do. He says, I can put $500 more, set that aside for the future. Now we're going to take that number, which totals $1,283, and see what it looks like in the future, added to this number, what it looks like in the future, and now our number is $1,246,000, and that would generate $3,115 every month. So again, these are the places that I can play with it. But I only want to worry about things I can do, and what's nice about putting together an annual plan is that next year I may be able to put $2,000 a month away. The next year, $5,000. Maybe the next year I'm putting a kid through college, so I can't put anything away. I just hold steady with what I'm doing. But every year you decide what you can do to cause this picture to change, which causes this picture to change. So again, if you're looking at all of these things, here are the things we can play with. Now let's say that I want $4,000 a month, but I can't afford to put any more than the $500 a month additional, or a total of $1,283. Well, one more thing I can control is how long I work, because the longer my money has to grow, the bigger it can become. So I can come over here and change this and say, instead of 25 years, what if I work 30? I'll work until I'm 70 instead of 65, Fred says. Well, in that case, the money grows to $1.5 million, and now he's getting pretty close to the $4,000 a month income. So you see, these green boxes allow you to determine the things that you really can control. How long am I going to work? How much am I going to set aside? Then we get to determine year by year what the appropriate rate of interest is going to be, and you get to determine where to put your money to make sure that it's in the proper asset classification. Again, on this side, we get to talk about the life insurance. How much should I have if I don't have time to finish my objective over here? If I'm gone and I want to finish this job, I can take pennies, buy dollars that show up on demand, and finish my plan so that it works. Now, a couple more things I want to point out is that now we're down here, and remember we said that we had $6,000 currently in savings? Well, this just shows that our target is 20. So when you start to pick your financial priorities, in other words, this is what a real financial plan is. Remember, priority number 1, make sure that we're spending less than we earn so that we have something to work with. Now that we have something to work with, we take it up here and we purchase the protection we need so that we can finish the job if we don't have the privilege of doing it ourselves. The third thing we do is make sure that our emergency fund gets built up to our target amount so that we can handle the emergencies and not have to go backward in our financial plan. Once those first 3 things are in place, then I can really start to emphasize debt elimination. And once I get rid of the debt monster, that ball and chain, then I'm free to take all of my savings and extra earnings capacity and put it up here at work. Now I can start growing my money so that someday I can stop working and still have income. So that's number 5. This is number 4. This is number 3. This is number 2. And getting a good budget is number 1. So with that, I simply look at the order and say, what's my highest priority for this year? Once we know what it is, we take whatever we can do this year. That becomes your financial plan. Then you're ready to move down here to step 10, where you click on the print button, and it will print out this page with your priorities and your numbers for your personalized financial reset plan. Now, one thing I want to emphasize, as I mentioned in the beginning, this information is not stored by us. And so once you get ready to print, everything will print out on this page and then it will disappear. And I'm going to give you an illustration of how that works. So I click on this button. Okay, indicate that I want to print the number of copies and so forth. So this is what you get once you press the print button. All the information disappears. It takes you right back to the beginning page. And at any time you want to make a change or go back and annually reset, you simply go back into the website and insert all of the appropriate information at the time. You're ready to start all over. So your information is safe with you, printed out on your one-page financial reset plan. So my best wishes, success, happiness, and prosperity. Remember, when you reset your barcode, you reset your life.